Welcome to Transforming Human Consciousness. I am Kevan Geola, and this program is sponsored by the Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Claremont. The issue of oneness of humanity for Baha'is is a spiritual principle that we believe everyone should understand, internalize, and act upon in order for us to have a world which is wholesome, which is healthy, which is happy, and most everyone can really find opportunities to be their best self. Oneness of humanity has many dimensions. One of them is in the area of we are all one human race. One of them is in the area of sex. There are men, there are women, but really we are like the two wings of a bird of humanity. And the balance between the two, not so much sameness, but equality, balance is very significant and important. And today, with my very special guest, Dr. Gloria Haithman, I would like to explore the whole topic of womanhood, sisterhood, equal rights for men and women, not only in the United States, in the West, but in different cultures, in South Africa, where she has traveled, and look at that topic. Dr. Haithman has her Ph.D. in urban studies from USC. She's currently the director of the Norman Topping Student Aid Fund at USC. She is advisor of the Baha'i Club at USC. She also is a mother, a grandmother. She serves on the elected governing council of the Baha'is of Los Angeles, the Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Los Angeles. She also works, helps with the World of Difference and trains teachers and educators in respect to racism and oneness of humanity. Tell me about sisterhood. I know this is something very special to you, and you have done some traveling in that respect. What is this global sisterhood, and where does it come from?
Well, I think it's the concept in which all women from whatever walks of life they come from can form a network to address issues that are of particular importance to them as women, but not just limited to issues important to them as women, but important to them as human beings. And what I think it is more inclusive than what is normally included in terms of the women's movement, which has historically addressed issues which are most concerned to a particular strata and type of woman, namely white middle-class women and their issues, but with little concern or direction in terms of some other issues that were shared by women from other places, other classes, if you will, although I hate to use that term, and who have other situations, life situations.
Can you give me any example, like what was it that was missing or was not addressed?
Many of the issues that are concerned to women of color, of course, have to do with race, and that was always considered as something separate. But your experience is a total experience, and it's not like over here I'm experiencing being black and over here I'm experiencing being a woman. There is experiences that is important because I'm black and because I'm a woman. So it has to, all of them have to be addressed. And for instance, well, just to be more specific, to be more specific, for instance, when the idea of voting came along, women and many black women were included in the suffrage movement, but women were allowed to vote. And then when black women wanted to address the fact they could not vote, they were told it was a black issue. Or even more recently, in 1984, when they had the women's, it was the Decade of the Women, they had a major meeting in Nairobi, and some of the women wanted to talk about the issues of apartheid, which were very important to them at that time, and other issues, and they were saying that wasn't women, that wasn't a part of women's issues, that was a part of, they wanted to focus on birth control and these kinds of things, you know. And so they don't address many issues that are foremost for other women.
So what you're saying is that it really is important to look at the woman as a whole and what impacts her life in any particular culture, in any particular part of the world, and the whole globe, rather than separate the issues and say, okay, now we are dealing with only voting, so let's not talk about your situation, because you not being able to vote is because you're black.
Yeah,
so we're
it's
not
not a
addressing
women's
race.
issue. That's right. That's one example. Another example is the whole issue of to work or not to work. I mean, it's not an issue of black women. We were drug over here to work. So we've always worked. Nobody worried about whether we could take care of our children. So we've always worked and taken care of our children. So we don't need to sit at hours debating whether we should do one or the other. We've always done both, and we will continue to do both. What our thrust now is to be able to work at different kinds of jobs, not cleaning up mostly other women's kitchens and taking care of other women's children, but also being able to have professions and to go into arenas of work where we can get better pay and more respect and more dignity. But it's never been an issue of us, I don't think, in general. And of course, I'm speaking in generalization of whether to have a career or whether to have a child. Why can't you do both? And so that's not our issue. But a lot of time is spent in talking about that.
Traveling to, I know you traveled to South Africa with several other women.
Yeah.
What was
This
the
summer.
purpose of it?
Well, we traveled, it was last June actually, June 1994, and it was a group of African-American Baha'i women. And we'd actually been invited by an African-American Baha'i woman who'd been there for 17, 18 years, seen a lot of changes too, and this was of course very significant. It was right after the elections. And she had sort of given us the challenge that as African-American women, because of the experiences that we've had as African-Americans in general, in spite of everything that's happened to us, we were the most educated blacks on the planet.
You were, or?
We are.
Oh, I see.
And that we should reach out to the blacks in other parts of the world and to help them to learn things. And then we can also learn from them, though. And this wasn't like we're going over just to show them anything, but that they also had a lot that they could do that would help us in terms of our situation, our feelings, and how we are in this country. And that certainly proved to be the case. It was 9 of us that went, and we were sort of going in friendship, and we wanted to learn about our sisters. In fact, she ended her invitations that it would be wonderful if the African-American sisters could reach out to the African sisters at this time. And we were able to travel in villages and cities and to see all strata, all kinds of African women, both black and white. And we talked about issues that, and there are issues that concern, all women are concerned about children, basically. Again, a generalization, there are a few who don't have children, not concerned. But I think most women, even if they don't have children, have some concern about what happens with children. Most women, I think, are not so anxious to have their children go to war as perhaps men are. I mean, you know, it seems that in governments run by men, you know, they talk about sending millions of young men into war without even thinking about these are our children and why are we sacrificing them. I think these are common things that are throughout. And we spoke to the women, you know, really from our hearts. And we actually, they spoke to us, and one of the things that they said to us was, you know, that we were the children of the stolen ones, which was a very significant sort
Is that
of
a new
moment.
term?
Well, it was what I had not heard before.
So the South Africans called you?
So there was
the
an
children of
incident in
the
which they said they were trying to, or what had happened, we went to see this group of women who did not speak English. We had an interpreter. And I think it was in the Belly tribe, women. And they were saying something, and all of a sudden they were all excited. And I asked the lady what she said. She said, well, you told us that the Americans were coming, but they look like us. You know, why do they look like us? And she said, you remember, well, our fathers told us of the big ships who came and stole some of the people. These are the children of the stolen ones. So that was a sort of, you know, really a significant moment for me anyway. And we learned a lot from them because in spite of their, sometimes we see them in dire conditions materially, but they had the spirit about them and this calmness. And we would say, you know, we talked among ourselves a lot too, and that was also very important. You know, in the inner cities or where some of our people are, and there's the cynicism and the bitterness, and these people had much less. And yet their spirit was so high and they were so full of hope and just love and calmness. I mean, it was just a wonderful thing. So we learned from them. They also asked us a lot about what we'd experienced and how perhaps they could improve themselves. They're very interested in education and that their children's lives would be better than their lives. So it was wonderful.
So, is this something that is going to be ongoing? Is it something that is going to be open to other parts of the world and other women? How do other women know about it? Is it something?
Well, it started from what we call the Sisters Gathering, which did occur in Oregon, which were a group of African American women who were Baha'is, decided to come together for a weekend and just share problems, stories, ideas, support each other. And from this group, a letter was sent to the group from this lady in South Africa, as I was talking about. Her name is Boney Franklin Moore. Anyway, and the whole project was named after the woman that brought her into the faith after this project materialized, whose name is Zambian Walker. And she'd been a very dynamic African-American Baha'i teacher who had, I mean, there are stories I understand. This was the first I had heard of her, but that she was really a great teacher and really brought many people into the faith. And she actually pioneered in South America, went all over the place. So yeah, we are planning there will be other groups going every year, I think, now on this sister to sister tour, and in other parts of the world too.
Well, we're going to take a break,
Okay.
Gloria, and then when we come back, we continue talking about what are some of the values, significances of working together as women, sisterhood.
Okay.
And for our audience, please stay tuned, and we shall be back. Welcome back. We are having a conversation with Dr. Gloria Haithman about women, sisterhood, global sisterhood, what significance it plays, especially at this age, talking about the whole realization of the oneness of all humanity, a civilization that would like to move forward, and what kind of a role, what kind of a place the whole concept of womanhood should have. You're talking about your trip to South Africa. You said that there was so much to be learned. You went with the idea of teaching the women in South Africa, but really the reality was that there was a lot learned also from them.
Well, actually, we knew we would learn a lot. We even said before we came, we're not coming to tell you what to do. We will also learn, and that is what happened. But certainly, the role of women in that particular country, the things that have been happening since, has been preeminent. They had a lot to do with the stability of the country. They kept things together when many other things were falling apart. And they played a role almost in every aspect of what has been going on in South Africa, a very prominent role. And in the new, the transitional constitution, women actually are given a significant attention, which is very good in this constitution that the Government for National Unity has developed. And it's sort of could serve as a prototype for some others.
Today, I know in the Western culture, we value our individualism a lot. And a lot of times I know that children, for example, the minute they find a chance, they will move out and they go live by themselves. And also know in other cultures of the world, people stay together a lot.
Yeah.
And they have like almost like communes together. Did you see a difference between the way women relate to one another here and the way they relate over there? And if so, was it helpful this way or that way? Did it make any difference?
I think certainly especially when you're in the areas of the villages, that there was a sort of communal lifestyle and women worked together. For instance, one time we were served dinner and all the women had gotten together and fixed dinner. But I mean, this would happen, I think, in other places also. But you did get the feeling that they do a lot of things together with each other, and they knew each other intimately. I mean, they really lived together and shared what meager resources they had with each other. They were intimately involved with each other's children, and that I think is a very important thing. And I certainly know in the African American community, historically, this network among women was an important part in the survival. Because often, again, as I said, we were drug off here to work.
Have we
so
lost
normally the women would leave their children if they were working in the fields with another woman who was older and no longer maybe quite so strong. So we've kind of had that. I think in the African American community, it still exists. I think maybe more so in the European American community. But I think we've lost some of what we used to have in terms of this idea that every child is my child. There's an African proverb which says it takes an entire village to raise a child. And I think that's a very important concept, because I think one of the things that's happened with our problems we have in cities is that, you know, the nuclear family, there's not even a grandmother there anymore, or an aunt or a cousin to help the family when they need help with the children. That's been the focus, and there's not been able to give children all they need in terms of support and perspectives and education. But I think we're beginning to realize that, and we're beginning to do more things like that in terms of city projects.
Do you see a trend of women reaching out more and forming networks with one another here in this country?
Yes, there are many women who, because usually surround some issue or some ideal, but they are forming clubs, organizations, whether it's from religious faith or whatever, but to deal with these problems of, usually, as I said, a lot around children, also a lot around the issues that concern women, reproductive issues, issues of work, issues of all kinds of issues that they are forming groups around. And I think this is a good thing.
And I see a lot more grandparents, and you are a grandparent. I see a lot more grandparents involved in the education of their grandchildren in their lives. I see more of them in the schools, actually, also as room mothers that I used to many years ago. Is that something that also is coming back?
I think so, because that was an important role that older women had at one time, and older men, was to work with the young people. And that has been diminished. But I think it is coming back more, because like in a lot of times in the cities where people are really living in, say, senior citizens apartments, that they are volunteering and working in schools, even if they are not the natural grandparents. But there's also an involvement with natural grandparents, I think, more. In the African American community, I think the role of grandparents has always been more significant as far as actual authority than in others, anyway.
So do you have plans to go back to South Africa? Is that something, or you did and it's all done and finished? Or?
Oh, I would love to be able to go back and actually stay long enough to work, because I think there's so much potential there. The people were so receptive, and I just think that there's a lot that, you know, I could do probably to help with the situation. Now, there's obviously problems here too, but I did like what I found in terms of what helped me in terms of my own figuring out who I was. It's like figuring out a puzzle and having some more pieces filled in to be there in Africa. So I do plan to go back if I can.
Could you share with us what were some of the aspects that you found? You said you found pieces of your own self.
Well, one of the things that happened to us as women was that for the first 3 weeks, almost any time we start talking, we would cry. And it was because I think the experience we've had as African Americans is, you know, you never know exactly what this Africa is about. And you have all of these stereotypes and these ideas that have been put to you. And to actually be there and to see the people and feel their warmth, I mean, that was a very emotional catharsis for us almost.
Like coming home?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it really was. I mean, I felt a sense of that. Yet, I know I'm not African because, I mean, I can't even speak. Oftentimes, people would come up to me. I did have my hair in braids, and they would come up to me, and I guess I looked like certain tribes, and they would try to speak to me, and I couldn't. And I really felt that loss. I couldn't communicate with my own people in the languages that they had started. But, you know, I was just glad to be there and to be able to communicate and establish relationships.
So a sense of kinship.
There was a very strong sense of kinship. And we didn't just talk to African women. We also talked to women who were white and Indian, East Indian descent. And I think they were all interested and wanted to make the new South Africa, as they call it, a better place. And so, you know, there was a real I think, sense of urgency and optimism. I mean, even though there's some of the residues, I mean, I'm not saying it's perfect, it's heaven, it's going to have problems. But I do think there's this surge, and it will prove to be, if we're not careful, it might reach the ideal of racial unity quicker, because they know they have a problem, and they don't deny it.
I see.
And I think that's the significant difference that I find there.
That there is open.
It's,
And
well, at
openness.
this point, it's open, yeah, and I think at least they realize they have a problem and they want to work on it.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the women, I think that is an issue too, because there are different rules that different tribes have. And certainly the notion of equality of men and women is something they are dealing with also. But you do see women who are taking the lead of it.
So you think that the receptivity and the love and the openness of the people, women in South Africa, towards the African American women from the West, really is an opportunity for these global exchanges?
Yes, and I think it could be extended beyond that. I mean, I'm sure that women from different parts of the world would visit other women and get to know them and form a network, which they do deal with these issues. The impoverishment of so many women, that should be an issue of concern to all women. They should also be concerned about some of the directions, as I said, that we are taking in terms of war and all of these kinds of things, world peace. So I think it has a lot of possibilities.
Well, certainly it speaks for the truth, having seen the experiences of the women in Iran, that when women get to be empowered, really the whole society changes for the better.
And we know that there are certain qualities of women that need to be brought to the forefront. The capacity, the nurturing quality, the ability to improvise and survive, and to show this love and affection. That's an important part of our humanity. Needs to be brought to the council chambers of every decision-making bodies of the world.
Dr. Haithman, I really appreciate your coming. It has been a pleasure. I wish we had more time to continue and talk. It has been most
my pleasure also.
Informative, really. For the audience, our viewers, I appreciate your attention. And if there are any questions or any comments about the issues and topics we talk about, please contact us via Baha'i Faith, P.O. Box 686, Claremont, California 91711, or our phone number 909-626-2569. And for Transforming Human Consciousness, thank you for being with us.